going. So the chat is good to go, but I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. I think at this point we're well into it, and those of you who are here on time deserve the props on that. So I would like to introduce Kim Guzman and Natalie Jimenez from the California Employers Association, and they're going to get us up to speed on the workplace violence prevention program that is becoming a mandate law. I'm not sure. Kim will probably go into that. Kim's going to do a majority of the presentation, and Natalie will kind of be in the background a little bit, and I believe she'll be in the chat as well. So Kim, please enlighten all of us.
Thanks, Peggy. I appreciate it. Hello, everybody. We feel like it's quite an honor to be talking to your group again. I loved seeing many of you in Monterey several months back. That was terrific. So as Peggy alluded, if you feel like this is something new, like, oh my gosh, I just found out about this and it's already due July 1st, you're not alone. We are hearing that from many, many employers. If you're wondering, hey, well, Kim, who are you and why did Peggy and why did the California Association of Realtors partner with you? Just a quick overview. We handle, we're an association just like you all. We're a 501c6 association for employers, and we handle everything in the employee life cycle. So our expertise for all of our members, which are from every walk of life and from every type of business you can imagine all over the state of California, they call us because they need assistance and peace of mind when it comes to employee headaches or laws that impact employees. So whether it's harassment prevention training or this new one, workplace violence prevention training, hiring, firing, or anything in between, we're there to help you with your answers to your questions. And we aren't attorneys. So we're providing you, we're kind of taking the law and we're making it digestible, and we're helping you understand what's going on in California and all the different employment laws and labor laws. But we aren't a law firm, so we encourage you to utilize your own partners and law firms if you need any advice, including on workplace violence prevention, because there may be some things that you're like, I need to talk to our attorney about this. So here's what we're going to cover today in 60 minutes or less. We're already at 12:05, so in 55 minutes, we're going to look at what is this workplace violence prevention plan and what do we need to do? What are our resources? How do we put this in place? And what do we do once it's happening? Because this is an unusual law in that once we do it this year, we have to do it forever and ever and ever, once a year, every year. So, sexual harassment is every other year, and that felt like a big burden. So many employers are saying, wow, this is going to be every year. And then you got to keep the records and things like that. So we're going to cover this. Natalie's in the chat. After each one of these bullets, there's kind of a nice stop segue where I can answer some questions. So then we'll keep going. So each bullet point here, we'll kind of take a moment, take a breath, and do my best to answer all your questions. And if we go a little long, I'll leave it up to Peggy and Mariah on how they want us to keep answering questions. So let's just start with just kind of a basic overview so you understand what this is. So you might hear it called the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan. You might call it SB 553. That means Senate Bill 553. And this all came out of legislation because of active shooter. That's really where it started. We've had things going on with active shooter back since I think Columbine is the first one I remember back in school, and then now we're hearing about active shooter everywhere, and in many different industries. So that's kind of where this came out of, is that healthcare has had issues with violence in the workplace much longer, I think, than most of us businesses. I was talking to a healthcare provider the other day, and she said, do you ask people to undress the minute they walk in your office? And I said, no, I don't. I never ask anybody to do that. And she said, so you can imagine the things we've been dealing with when we're dealing with just such an intimate setting as healthcare. So healthcare has had workplace violence prevention plan requirements since 1993. This is not new to them. My husband worked for the state of California for 35 years. They already had this type of stuff. The corrections institution, a lot of other places have already had this. But those of us that are in the private sector, we haven't had a requirement that we've got to keep our employees safe. And now that things are in the news, this is a requirement that we do have to have a plan to keep our employees safe. There are a few exceptions, and we'll talk about those later, but those of us in associations, we're not exempt if we're open to the public, and most of us are. That means anybody could walk in the door at any time. So let's talk for a minute about what is considered workplace violence, because maybe that's not, just what we all need to have the same definition. So it's really physical force against somebody, or something that has a high likelihood of resulting in injury to somebody. That could be a psychological injury, it could be trauma, it could be stress. Even if the employee doesn't sustain an injury, there's still workplace violence if those things occur. When you have a gun involved, when you have somebody throwing a stapler at another employee across the room, when you have two employees fighting, even now sexual harassment will be falling under workplace violence. So that's new for us all to know. And specifically under this law, they've broken violence down into 4 different types. So the type 1 violence is when you have violence by somebody that has no legitimate business to be at your work site. So again, an active shooter, maybe an unhoused person walks in the door and starts threatening people with a knife or whatever. That's type 1. The second type is type 2, and that's violence directed at employees by a customer, by a client. Not in your case, but in a dental office, by a patient who says, I'm going to choke you, or, how dare you did this to me, whatever. Type 3 type of violence is violence against an employee by somebody who currently is working there. So 2 employees are fighting, one hates the other, whatever, they're calling each other names and they get into it. And finally, the 4th type of violence would be violence by a person who doesn't work at your office, but they know somebody who works there. And so a great example of this, sadly, is, an ex, right? An ex-husband, an ex-wife who comes on site. And so I don't know if any of you have ever had to deal with that, but hey, domestic violence issues, maybe restraining orders, things like that. So when you start thinking about this, I kind of get a little bit of chills, because it's like, ooh, all this stuff could be happening. Hopefully it hasn't happened to you, but it could be happening, and it could happen. And so the idea is, what's your game plan if it does? And what do you need to do now to be in compliance with the law if one of these things happen? And so as you create your plan, and I'm going to talk to you about how you do that, but you're going to need to be thinking throughout the plan. This is not something you just sit down and do in one day. Okay, we had one person write our plan, 4 of us reviewed the plan, then we had 2 meetings about the plan, we involved the employees in the plan. It's something we've been working on for the last 3 weeks. Okay, and so just know that, and give yourself the grace that this is a new thing and you want to be thoughtful about it. So you want to be thinking about, who's the administrator of my plan? Maybe you're 2 or 3 or 4 person office, so it's really easy. Hey, I know it's me. I'm the one, I'm there every day. I'm the administrator. Maybe you have multiple administrators, so there isn't just one person. The administrator doesn't have to be the CEO or the executive director. So you need to be thinking, as we walk through this and talk through this, about that. What I would highly recommend to you is you use Kalosha's model. Okay, so Kalosha has done us a big favor, and that is in March, they gave us a model. So you can just Google Kalosha Workplace Violence Prevention Plan, and there it is. Now, it is 19 pages long, and it has like red areas where you need to fill in what you need to fill in. So again, it's very easy. I don't want you to think this is going to be hard. It is time consuming. It takes a lot of thought and energy, but it's not hard. It's not like, oh my God, I'll never figure this out. When you first look at it, you may go, oh, I'm overwhelmed. That is what my response was. But then you go, okay, it's like, what do they say? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So it will walk you through all the 12 different requirements. And those 12 different requirements are things like, whose responsibility is this? How are we actively involving the employees? What do the employees have to do to comply? How do we communicate with our employees? How do we coordinate with other employers that are in our building? Okay, because like us at CEA, we have an office, we have maybe 7 or 8 people there on an average day, some days 2 people, but we have other employers in the building. We have like estheticians, we have dentists in the building, we have all kinds of things. So what are their game plans on theirs? We need to kind of be talking to them. In fact, we have a magazine next door. What if somebody was disgruntled about what the magazine printed and they came pissed off at the magazine, but we're next door? Well, we want to know what's your plan so that we know you're taking this seriously because we are. And so you kind of walk through all the 12 areas. Training, it talks about training, instructions, how to respond to investigations, how to log investigations. So I want you to know that it's very thorough. Kalosha is giving this for free, okay? And then you just kind of will walk through step by step and fill out each one of those red portions. Now, once you've got it complete, and then I'm going to back up, so I'm not like, this is not over. But once you've got it complete, let's pretend we're there, even though we're going to go back. Then you've got to have your owner or your top manager does need to be involved at that point. So maybe your CEO doesn't write this up, but they need to know it, they need to understand it, and they're going to be the ones that are going to sign off on it. And then once it's done, you need to make sure it's easily available to everybody. Maybe it's on a shared intranet drive. Maybe it's posted up and put in a few places through. There's a lot of freedom in how you make sure you make it available to everybody. Maybe give everybody a copy. You could put it as an addendum in your handbook. You don't have to. You could put it as an addendum in an injury illness prevention plan if you have one, but you don't have to. You have to know where it is though, because if Kalosha comes on site and says, we'd like to see this, you need to be ready to give it to them, right? So if you want to have it in a binder on the shelf, that's fine too. Anytime an employee says, I want to see it, you can say, here's where it is. But if they say, well, I want a copy to take home and read, you have to do that at no charge for them. And then after this is done, again, every year you're going to be training your employees. You need to review this every year, and you need to review it any single time there's an incident. So if everything's going great, and then there's a big fight in the office or a disgruntled client comes in and slams something on the counter and breaks a window on the way out, that would be an incident that you would have to pull out your policy and review it again. Do we need to change anything, add anything? Maybe not. Do we need to just tell everybody, hey, there was an incident, here's what we did? That kind of thing. So that's just the general overview. I'm going to take a quick little stop here to see if there's anything immediate that somebody has a question about. That, and it may be something that I'll say we're going to talk about that in a minute. But Natalie, is there anything immediate right now?
I do not see any questions.
Okay. We're all just going, whew. All right. So let's talk a little bit about employee involvement and training. So it's required in this policy that you find out how your employees feel about safety in the workplace as a whole. And so one of the things, they don't tell you how to do this, but one of the things we're recommending is that you maybe do a survey. It could be a email survey, it could be a handwritten survey, it could be a monkey survey, Survey Monkey. Which way am I saying that right? We did a Survey Monkey. So again, we only have 25 employees. We're not huge. I know we're bigger than some of you, smaller than some of you. We did a Survey Monkey, and we just said things like, hey, we're going to have to create a workplace violence prevention plan. Is there anything you feel unsafe about? Do you feel like the parking lot doesn't have good lighting at night? Do you feel like we have unhoused people loitering and that makes you nervous? Do you feel like there's not enough fire extinguishers in the hall? I mean, whatever it might be, you can give them some, multiple choices, but then you can also say, please fill in the blank. And then you can also say, would you like to be a part of this planning process? Would you like to be on a committee, so that if something did happen, would you, some people like, yeah, I want to be on a safety committee if you were to form one. You don't have to ask that, but I'm just giving you ideas. There's no right or wrong, but you do need to have employee involvement. They need to feel like they have a voice in this. You can do anonymous surveys, but they don't have to be anonymous. You can, and they don't, if you send it out to everybody and somebody says, I don't want to fill it out, that's okay too. We have a workplace violence toolkit. Many of you are our members, and on our website, we have a free workplace violence toolkit, and there's a sample survey that you can send out to your employees with many of the questions I just mentioned. The other thing that this workplace violence prevention plan law requires is that employees in your company need to know how they're supposed to report something when there is a concern. And that can be that you just have an open door policy and they just need to know it needs to say in your plan, you need to come to, talk to Natalie, or you need to talk to Kim, or you need to send an email here, or some of our members have an employee action hotline, that they send their people to, or maybe you have a suggestion box in the middle of your lobby, whatever it might be. But are there a variety of ways for people, if they were embarrassed or didn't want to come directly to you, is there another way that they could anonymously report that there's a problem and they feel uncomfortable or unsafe because they heard Joe talking on the phone and he said he was going to kill somebody, or you heard Melissa saying to her husband for the 10th time, you better not come down here. What is a way that somebody could overhear that, and what would they do if they thought, oh God, something's going to happen potentially? Let's see, what else here? You need to have safety meetings. Now, they don't tell you how many you need to have. One of the things that I'm kind of doing personally for CEA is I'm putting in my plan that at any staff meeting, we will include any safety updates. And by that, what I'm meaning is, so I have a staff meeting and I'm going to have, if I have a PowerPoint or an agenda, I'm going to have a bullet point that says safety update. Is there any safety concerns? Has anything happened since our last meeting that we need to talk about? Yeah, as a matter of fact, we literally had a situation where 5 guys were at our front door. They thought we were an employment agency because I guess of our name. And it was one person in the office alone. We have a locked door at all times with an intercom doorbell, which we got for $40 on Amazon. I highly recommend it. And we didn't have it at the time. We bought it after this incident. And so these guys are knocking on the door, and our receptionist, Jen, opens the door, and here's 5 guys, and they're saying, we need work. And she's like, we're not an employment agency, and they want to come in. And she's saying no. And she said, she shut the door, and she goes, I really wasn't afraid, but it was also kind of uncomfortable. And I don't know, and so we said, hey, you got a window, you can look out there. Let's lock the door at all times. Let's put this intercom doorbell. And when they push the doorbell, then you can talk to them through the door if you don't feel safe and you don't want to open it because you're there alone, or you just don't feel safe for any reason at all. So we now have that all the time. And that is a hassle in a way, because that means the postman or the postal lady rings it every day, and so does FedEx, and so does UPS, and so do any of us coming in that don't have our key on us, but it's safety. So that's just an idea. Sorry, I digressed there. So safety meetings, any new employees that come on, you would need to train them. So it'd be part of your new hire orientation. If you've got somebody who's having problems with anger management, things like that, any disciplinary action, then that's going to need to be, you're going to need to talk with them about things that, hey, we don't, that's unsafe behavior. That's making people feel uncomfortable. We have a 0 tolerance, for any violence in the workplace, things like that. So let's talk about deadlines a little bit. We already know July 1 is the, so in theory, and technically speaking, since this is being recorded, technically speaking, we all need to have our workplace violence prevention plan completed by July 1st. And all of our people need to be trained on it by July 1st. And then annually thereafter. And then anytime there's a new hazard or a new game plan or anything happens that would impact that workplace violence prevention plan and edit it or change it in any way, then more training is needed then. The trainer, who's supposed to be the trainer, right? So one of the things was, I'm not a safety person. How am I supposed to do training? I don't know how to train people. So the trainer does not have to be a safety expert. It needs to be somebody who's an expert at your workplace violence prevention plan. Somebody who knows those 19 pages inside and out and understands it. Maybe they've talked to an attorney, maybe they've worked with CEA, whatever it might be, but it's the trainer is the person who knows the plan. During the training, the employees need to be able to ask questions. So this is not just watch a video and walk away, right? And it needs to be something they can understand. So I'll just give you an example of what we have here at CEA. CEA members already have a California workplace violence prevention plan that we have on our website for free. That's already been there. It's 35 minutes. Then we have created a 30-minute PowerPoint that talks about all the things I'm talking to you about right now in a 30-minute condensed format. So if a brand new person comes to CEA, I'm saying, I want you to watch this 35-minute video, and then I'm going to give you this 30-minute PowerPoint, and that's how I'm going to train you. And then I'm going to give you a copy of our plan. So I've got a plan here for you. I've got a video, which is just supplemental. You know, that's gravy train. And then I'm going to do a PowerPoint with you to make sure you know it. That's how I'm doing it. You could choose to do it that you just sit down with that new person and you walk through the workplace violence prevention plan with him and you talk with them about here's where the exits are. Do you understand what you would do if you feel unsafe? You know, so you don't have to spend money on this plan is what I'm saying. I'm hearing from reporters, we're talking to a lot of reporters and they're like, this is going to cost thousands of dollars. It can if you want. I paid the safety center to come on site and do an active shooter training for all our employees because I wanted to, not because I had to, but because it kind of freaked me out talking about this all the time that maybe we ought to have them come on site. And so they actually had a gun come in, it was a fake gun. Gun came out of a thing and we all had to escape the building and find the nearest route. And, you know, so you can do that, but you don't have to do that. So.
And we have a question.
Yes.
Would employees that use foul language that can be offensive to another employee be considered workplace violence?
Ooh.
Good one.
That is a great question. I'm going to just turn back to that page where it talked about the 4 types and where it defined it. So give me a second to look that. It's saying workplace violence is an act of violence or threat of violence that occurs in a place of employment. So if I said to you, I'm going to choke you and kill you, you MF, I'm using foul language, but it's really the threat. I think just cussing in general, I don't see that just using a bad word, a 4-letter word, how that would be. But it's, again, when I look at the definition, it's again, physical force that has a likelihood of resulting in psychological trauma. So I don't see just foul language following under that. That would be more like maybe creating a hostile work environment or things like that, I think, more than this. But that's the best I can give you. I'm happy to look into that if we get that person's information. Interestingly enough, there is a lot of freedom here, maybe because Cal OSHA, you know, whenever a new law comes out, it's new for everybody, even them, right? And so now, until some lawsuits happen, sadly enough, and some things, and they start getting peppered with the thousands of questions we've gotten peppered with, and they come up with more frequently asked questions, there's still a lot of ambiguity here. First ambiguity being, if I have to train my people every year, how long does that training need to be? No specific duration. So that's where I say it could be you sitting down, reading through all 19 pages with that person. And maybe that takes you 1 hour. And that's the training is an hour. Maybe it's the way we're doing it. We're doing a 35-minute video and a 30-minute PowerPoint and having a conversation. And that's 1 hour and 10 minutes or 5 minutes. So it's up to you how long that training lasts. And I think this first year is going to be the tough year. After we get it done, this first year is heavy lifting. And then each year, I think it'll just become, you know, not a big deal. But right now, it is much more involved. What about multiple languages is a question we get. And we do, again, it doesn't say that you need it in multiple languages. But if you're, for example, and I don't know that it is, but if your main workforce was Vietnamese or Spanish speaking, then you might want to have the workplace violence prevention plan in the language that the majority of your employees are speaking, just because you're trying to keep them safe. So you want them to be able to read it, but there is nothing There's nothing requiring that. But in the training, what you need to be talking about, there are specific things you have to train, and that's in this Cal OSHA. It tells you, you have to tell them how to get a copy of the workplace plan, violence plan. You have to tell them where to report their incidents. You have to give them examples of hazards that might be specific in your area. I mean, maybe you're located next to a train station. So your office, you say, you know, hey, when you walk outside, make sure you watch out for the train tracks, or maybe you're in an industrial area that's not well lit at night, or you know, any myriad of things. So there might be specific things around your job that you need to talk to them about in your office. And how do they make, you know, get corrective measures implemented? You're going to tell them that you're going to have a violent incident log, and you're going to tell them where you're posting that, and that they'll be able to know and see anytime violence happens. Now, on the violent incident log, it's not going to have, you know, Kim was choked by Charlie. It's going to say an employee, you know, was choked by another employee, or, an unknown person came into the office with a knife, or whatever it might be. So you want to have some, you know, confidentiality in that.
And Kim, we have another question.
Okay.
We involve employees who work virtually and don't ever come into the office.
That's a great question. If they honestly are never, ever, ever, ever going to come in, don't need to worry about it. Again, at my office, we have a lot of employees who don't live in the area, but they do come into our office about 3 times a year for a full staff training. So it seems like not a lot, but when we had our safety fire drill, active shooter drill the other day, we had everybody came in. I flew everybody in, drove everybody in. And I think 90% of the people, when we said, do you know where the nearest exit is? They all said the front door, which is down 4 flights and out the front door, when in fact, literally outside our door and to the right is an exit. And none of them knew about it. So it was helpful for them to know, even if they're only coming into the office 3 times a year, how do I get out if there's a fire, if there's a shooter, a bomb threat, whatever, how do I get out? You got to get to the nearest exit, and it's right outside our door. And had we not had everybody come in and done that, those remote people would never have known about that. We good, Natalie? Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about developing a workplace violence prevention plan policy. Now, you said, well, what have we been talking about all this time? We've been talking about the required plan. Again, the 19-page plan. You may choose or not, I did, to come up with a policy about your workplace violence prevention plan. So I call it my WVPP policy. It's only 2 pages long instead of 19, and it highlights the things that the employees need, and then it has a sign-off area for them. So it's a lot easier for training purposes to say, listen, we've got a full 19-page plan, but a lot of the plan, and you can have a copy of it, but what I need you to sign is that you understand the policy, which is 2 pages, and we kind of narrowed that down. Again, it's not an explicit requirement, but I think it is a much easier way to be able to go through your plan instead of having to go through the policy every single time with every person. And I think it will just help you kind of make sure you've satisfied all your basic requirements, because there's a lot of things in the Cal OSHA thing that talks about, you know, who's going to do the investigation and how are they going to do the investigation and when are they going to, and that doesn't need to be in your policy. That just needs to be for the person who's administrating the plan. So I'm saying there's a lot of stuff for the administrator, but the employee only maybe needs to know about 2 pages out of that 19 pages. So this is an option for you, but we did this, it's 2 pages long, and then the 3rd page was a sign-off acknowledgement. And then each year we'll just get out the policy and say, do a training of roughly an hour, and then have them sign off that, yes, we understand the 4 different types. And basically we pulled stuff all out of the Cal OSHA, the requirements, into this policy. And again, it's going to be talking about, you're going to use your policy when you implement the plan, and then every year, and then anytime there's a new violent incident, again, you would just change that policy instead of having to change the whole plan and show that to everybody again. There's also, when it comes to the procedures you need to do in creating your whole big plan, you do need to identify and evaluate any hazards in your office. So it is the workplace violence prevention plan, the big one from Cal OSHA, is going to tell you what all you need to look for. It's going to tell you to walk around and look to see. So for example, I'll give you this, hopefully that's helpful. I walked out and I saw that exit that I was telling you about. There's no exit sign. So no wonder, we've been in this building a year. Nobody knew there was an exit there. It just looks like a door. But so I went to the landlord and said, I need you to put an exit sign up there because there should be an exit sign there. We also had when we brought in the safety center, we had them walk around. They're like, there's nowhere to pull for a fire alarm. There are fire extinguishers on each floor, but there's not a fire alarm. You might want to talk to your person about that. So just walking around, is the place lit? Are all the lights working? Is the door locking properly? Or are people propping it open with a big block of concrete or something, So it'll show you when you're creating your workplace violence prevention plan, how to evaluate and identify hazards, and then to talk with your landlord maybe to get some of those fixed, which has been an ongoing thing. I think I've had 3 or 4 emails, and our landlord's not being quite as quick. She didn't even know that this was a plan, so you may be educating your landlord at the same time you're identifying risks or hazards that you're coming up with. And here's again a great list of those examples. Do you have security guards there? Do you have a tag in? Is it closed down automatically after 6 o'clock at night and before 8 a.m. in the morning? Or, are there mirrors and cameras so that people feel like, okay, we're being watched and we're being, safe. So those are the types of things you would be looking for. One of the things in your workplace violence prevention plan is going to talk about emergency response procedures. And what this is talking about is, where do we meet? What do we do? And you want different things. So for example, if there's a fire in your building, do you want everybody to meet in the parking lot where the fire engines are coming, or do you want them to meet down the street at Starbucks, or where would you want them to meet? So that, and again, if you only have 2 people, that's probably not a big deal. But if you have an office with 25 people on 2 different floors, it might be a big deal. How do we make sure we get everybody out of the building safely, and where are they going to meet? And then the safety gentleman that we had said, if it's an active shooter situation where somebody comes into the building with a gun, it's just everybody gets out. There's not a special place to meet. And in fact, you maybe don't want a special place to meet if it's somebody you just fired last week. They come back, they're pissed off. You don't want them to know you're all running to the Starbucks down the street, right? So it's just, you want to say in your plan, hey, if you feel unsafe, an active shooter comes in, you just get out, get safe. And then do you want them to call? Who's going to call everybody? Do you have a phone tree? Do you have a texting tree in your phone that you could say, Peggy, Natalie, Elaine, are you safe? Are you somewhere safe? How do you, who's calling 911? Who's, that kind of thing. And I know this all seems like overkill, but it really has been an interesting thing for our staff to go, let's at least talk about it. I don't know if we'll remember how to do all this, but if we talk about it enough, then when it happens, hopefully we know, oh, that's right. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is where I'm supposed to go. This is who I'm supposed to call. We talked about in our office, after the lobby, there you come in, there's a front desk little lobby, then there's a door, but that door doesn't have a lock on it. And then there's all of our offices. So, at a minimum, what the receptionist could do is if she saw somebody, she could at least lock that door, for us, or we could lock that door. So now one person's stuck with this person, but the rest of us are now calling 911, that kind of thing. So are there things you can do to just make things safer and better for everybody, and just have some conversations about it, and what about other people, as I mentioned in the building, if you hire a temp agency to send you people, hopefully those people are going to don't be surprised that those temp agencies will require you to provide your workplace violence prevention plan so that those temporary employees know what they're supposed to do. If the one day they come work for you is the day something bad goes down. And you need to talk about, again, and there's no real teeth to this. So I went next door to our company that runs a magazine, and I'm like, hey, what are you going to do about this And she's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So first of all, I'm educating her. And then I'm saying, you know, you've already had 2 break-ins that I'm aware of. So that bothers me because I'm next door to you. And so what are your plans? And you can't force somebody else to do something, but it's be a good neighbor, right? Neighborhood watch in your neighborhood. And they joke about the nosy neighbor. Nobody wanted the nosy neighbor. Now we're all happy because that way they make sure our Amazon packages don't get stolen off our front porch. So work with building management, work with your employers in your building. Just, you know, what are you guys doing? Maybe you can join forces in telling the landlord that you need security in the building.
And Kim, can you clarify the WVPP policy is for the employee to sign an acknowledgement that they have received the full WVPP plan?
Yes, so the policy basically says, I know where the plan is, I've received a copy of the plan, and I understand what's involved. So yes, but the policy is just 2 pages. And for example, you could say it's there on your intranet. So if you didn't want to actually physically hand them 19 pages, you could say there's one hanging up in the break room, and the other one's on the internet, and here's the link to it on the internet. But here's the short version of the highlights and the summaries. And I want you to sign off that you know where to find the full one, and you know what's in the full one, and you know that we're taking care of you, and you know how to file a complaint, that kind of thing. So again, you don't have to do the policy if you'd rather just do the plan and then have everybody sign on the plan. You could certainly do that. The policy just like streamlines it way down. Happy to share our policy with anybody who wants it, just so you could see a sample. You know, our 2-page policy. I can give that to Peggy, and she can send it out to everybody. I have no problem doing that. Okay,
That would be awesome, Kim, because that was
Okay.
actually the next question. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'll send you ours, and you just, people can take it and take what they like and leave the rest. And that'll help you see. And then when you go over to the Cal OSHA, if you haven't already, in the middle of my talking, jumped over, look at Cal OSHA Workplace Violence Prevention Plan template. And again, that's free. That's what you're going to be going through. To the safety meetings, just a little bit more on the safety meetings. Again, they are not a standalone requirement, but they are, they say throughout the whole document over and over again, what are you doing about safety meetings? What are you doing about safety meetings? So it's weird when they say things like, we don't require safety meetings, and yet it's throughout the whole plan that we're asking you, where are your safety meetings? When are your safety meetings? How frequently are your safety meetings? So there's still a lot of weirdness. So it's like, just assume safety meetings will eventually be in the frequently asked questions, that yes, this has to happen. And again, maybe it's the annual training, and then yes, we talk about safety quarterly, or we talk about it at each staff meeting. We have a bullet point on it. Is there anybody have any safety concerns? Okay, on to the next topic, you know, something like that. Or maybe you say, no, this is serious, Kim, you're making light of it. We really want to have a whole safety team, a safety committee, and we want to meet once a month. That's great too. But it's up to you to figure out how you're going to do it and the frequency of which you're going to do it. But don't tie yourself, you know, I'd say when we wrote our plan, we kind of left it that yes, we will do safety meetings at our staff meetings. And I left it. I didn't say quarterly. I didn't say biannually. I didn't lock myself into a corner. You know what I mean? Hazard inspections. We kind of talked a little bit about this, and most of us were in offices. We're really low hazard. I mean, you talk about hazards when you talk about like a Costco, right? Or a grocery store, or a place with multiple access entries and forklifts coming here and there. And, you know, people could come in from anywhere. Those are the high hazard. Manufacturing, not only the injury aspect, but just that there's a lot of points of entry that people could come in unknowingly. And again, we're going back to the thought of active shooter, or a disgruntled spouse, or a disgruntled employee. How many different ways are there for them to get in, sneak in, hide, that kind of thing? Those are the thoughts that are going through when you're talking about this kind of stuff. So those are the things to be thinking about. And if there's a new hazard that comes up, you need to incorporate that. And again, the person who's responsible, the administrator, needs to be I need to be, so I'm our administrator, right? Along with the two other people. So I need to be actively walking around the building, a couple times a year. Are the cameras still working? Are the lights still working? I'm usually the last one to leave, so I know in the wintertime how dark it is. And so are all those lights working outside? But that's something continual all year long. And then I need to document when I'm doing those. And there's a whole log for me through a part of this workplace violence prevention plan. Cal OSHA will supply you with some of that. And, Kim's the one who did it. She did it on July 2nd. Here's what she did. I've got emails proving that I'm writing to the landlord saying, we need an exit sign. Where's my fire extinguisher? And then I found out, oh, you have to provide your own fire extinguisher in your own office. So I'm going to go buy a fire extinguisher. I'm going to put that in the plan. I'm going to say I did that on my log. So I'm actively doing this. So this is one more thing we do need to do, but we're doing it in the vein of keeping us and our employees safe. I've made a couple of mentions to the violent incident log or the violence incident log. I think that sounds weird to call it a violent incident log, but anyway, this is not just for full-blown incidences. This is for any little thing that would happen. So again, it could be, I heard Maria talking the other day. She said her ex-husband is very angry. He says he's going to take it out on her. I heard her crying at lunch. I need to report this to somebody because I think this could potentially escalate. Do we have a picture of Maria's husband? If he shows up, do we know not to let him in? Is there a domestic violence restraining order out on him? In which case, we need to let everybody know that there's an employee who has a restraining order on their spouse. We need to do that in a thoughtful manner, but everybody needs to know about it. So maybe we don't need to say it's Maria's husband. We need to say the name of the person we don't want coming in. So it's going to be a tricky thing when it starts happening because it's that confidentiality. How do I, there's the violence incident log that's not confidential. Everybody gets to see it. So you might say something like a female employee in the customer service department or a female employee encountered this at the front desk, but you don't need to say it was Kim or it was Jen or it was Natalie or things like that. But you do on your confidential one that you keep, but not on the one that your employees see. So you see, there's just a lot of nuances to this, and we're all just going to have to go through it together. I did talk to a Cal OSHA consultant, and he said to me, Kim, obviously we're not going to have everybody banging down everybody's door on July 2nd. We just want to know people understand the law. They're working on it. They're training their employees. They're taking it seriously. There are fines up to $25,000, but that's for a willful violation of a Cal OSHA standard. So that's somebody who goes, I know what the law is and I don't give a crap. I'm not doing it. And if they were to get wind of that, that would be a problem. But if for some reason something happens on your site and they come in and they say, show me all your records, and you're like, oh my gosh, I was in the middle of the plan. I could show you everything I did. They'd be much more lenient with you. There's also the Cal OSHA consultation hotline, which is a free hotline. You can look that up on, just Google it, Cal OSHA consultation. They can give you a lot of free help over the phone if you have questions as you go through this. And again, particularly on the violent incident log, Cal OSHA has a great sample. We would say, do it, use it. It's good. It's got everything that they're requiring. And again, just be confidential when it's something that everybody can see. All right, we're at about 15 minutes, and that's good. We got about 5 or 6 more slides, and then I'll open it up for some questions here. All right, let's talk about record retention here. So you need to keep all of these logs we've talked about for 5 years, okay? So maybe whether you want to keep them in the back of your, if you're going to have something on the shelf, like a 3-ring binder, you can keep them there. Keep them on the internet, however you want to do that. But your investigations need to be in there, your incident logs, the proof that you've gone around and identified hazards and what you've done about them and how you corrected them and when you corrected them and why you corrected them. In addition to that, for 1 year, the training records for these people that are going to come into your office, if they even only come in once or twice a year, they need to be trained. So again, we brought everybody in. 3 people were sick that day or out, right? So now the other 3 I'm going to train on a virtual Zoom like I'm doing with you, but I will also be pulling up our policy, and I will also be asking them to watch this video because I think it's a great video on California workplace violence and all that type of stuff. So those training records have to be kept for a year. And then just to kind of wrap us up here with 10 minutes left, the biggest thing I can say to you today is just get going on it. At least pull it down, start working on it, start looking at it, wrapping your head around it. You may need to read it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before you're ready to really start taking one chunk at a time. Remember, the employee feedback is a huge part of this, which is unlike most other laws we're asked to do. This one, you've got to have employee feedback. So if you can get that sooner rather than later, that's what I would suggest. Before we even wrote our plan, we already were asking the employees questions that helped us with the plan. Then you look at whether you want to do the policy and procedures. And again, I'll send it to Peggy today so that it's fresh and she can send it out to you and you can look at the policy. And then you need to schedule the training. And then you need to think about how often do you want to do inspections, how often you want to do safety meetings, and who's going to do it, or who, plural or singular. We have a do-it-yourself package. It has a webinar that is much more detailed than this. It has a workplace violence prevention plan toolkit. If you're not already a CEA member, that's $3.99. If you're a CEA member, you can get it for free. You can get our workplace violence prevention plan toolkit for free right on our website. And it has things like the sample survey questions, how you ask for feedback, our policy, which I'm giving you anyway. And it has an investigation report that's different than the one. We thought it was a little better than Calosha's, and an incident log that we took theirs and we kind of made it a little better. So we just tried to take what they had and make it more digestible. And that, we always love members of the California Association of Realtors to be our members as well. So that's what I've got for you now, but I really want to hear from you. We have 10 minutes. Would love your feedback, good, bad, and ugly here. If you'd like, I can also jump over to the Calosha template and we can show you that too. Peggy, how would you like to spend these last few minutes?
I would love for you to open it up to questions, and if there are none, then go to the Calosha template. But
okay,
I feel like people mostly had their questions in the chat, and Jeanette Bauman wants to know the pricing on the membership again.
sure. So there's the one I would start out with is $109 a month, and that you can stop that at any time. So in theory, you could join for several months, see what you think, and if you say, I got what I needed, then you can bounce. Your choice. That's our lowest level. That gives you all the access you need to all the things we've talked about.
Perfect. There's another question here. We asked employees for feedback and received none. Is that okay? Does that cover the requirement?
Absolutely, yes, that's totally fine. Yes, you can. I'll just put it aside. That's okay. Sorry. That now we can just open it for questions here. Yeah, if you went ahead and you put out a survey, you would just have a copy of that email or that survey and just say we had nobody responded to it, but we gave everybody the opportunity to get involved. And then now maybe the next time of involvement is going to be when you do your actual training for everybody.
Awesome. If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand. You can open up your mic. Let me see if I see anything else.
While you're doing that, I want to go get that Calosha thing, the workplace violence.
Leanne, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. We do have a draft done. I was a little confused about one item. I believe it says that anytime there's an incident reported, that anyone has the right to ask for a copy of it. But doesn't that violate confidentiality if it deals with, you know, someone's identity or another employee?
Yeah, I know that's a very, I think that's very confusing in there. And what I did see at the end of this was to have, you'd almost in a sense have two, right? You'd have the real one that you have with all the details, and then you'd have blacked out one that would be available to anybody to see. So my name would be blacked out, or, you know, something that you'd believe I can give you, I can show you date, time, what, when, where, but I can't tell you who because I'm protecting their confidentiality.
Okay, and what if it is a member? Do we have requirements to report it to NAR?
Not to my knowledge. To my knowledge, everything in this is about you and your employees. Now, I don't know whether your national association is going to say, hey, everybody needs to do this like they do sexual harassment. Do you have anything right now where you have to tell them that you're doing sexual harassment training or anything like that?
I mean, we're required to do it every 2 years, but I mean, it's just done. It's just basically watching a video.
Right. This would be in the same vein, you know, meaning, yeah, this is really something your individual association needs to do for your employees to keep them safe.
No, understood. But what happens if someone violates it? Like if there's a member that comes in that becomes violent, or you know, so we have to keep
okay.
a report of that. But who do we report it? Do we have to report it to their broker or NAR or?
You would want to report it. Now, I need to understand the chain. So let me give you a little example only because I'm not sure exactly who you need to report it to. And we went down to Newport Beach. We did an investigation for one of our clients, a harassment investigation. We determined there was harassment. That employer decided to fire that employee. That employee was very disgruntled. He came up with a whole manifesto and a whole conspiracy board about how we had ruined his career. He got in his car and he drove up to CEA and he walked in the front door because at that time we didn't lock it. And he said, I wanted to see where Kim Guzman is and I want to give her this because she's ruined my life. And I wasn't there that day, which was great. And so he left. And then the next day I came in. And so I filed a police report. I called my board chair and then I called that client and said, listen, your ex-employee just came up here. You need to know about this so that you can be safe. So I guess what I'm saying is you need to report it to all the people that are involved so that everybody's safe and everybody's aware of what took place. I guess you'd have to maybe talk to an attorney about how and who that is from a confidentiality standpoint. But the idea is, how do we, this disgruntled person, how do we make sure everybody's safe from that person? I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay. And it looks like Sonia and Kimberly had questions.
Hi. We have tenants, so we own our building and we have tenants that we lease offices to. And I know you mentioned other people that might work in the building, but I think it's not every employer has to have this plan, right? I mean, I think they're all individual employers. So is there anything we would need to do with them regarding the plan?
So that's a great question. So I do want to mention that. So I think that Peggy said she sent out who's exempt. So you're right. Not everybody needs this plan. But if your business is open to the public, you need a plan. So if you have less than 10 employees working at any time and you're not accessible to the public and you have an injury illness prevention plan, then you're exempt. So first, I guess for your tenants in the building is, you know, making sure they know about it, you know, sending them a blog or whatever. And then if I were you as the landlord of the building, I would be saying that this is a California requirement. And as a part of our duty, we want to make sure everybody in the building has one. And as a requirement of being here, we want a copy of yours or something. I think you could absolutely do that as the landlord of that building because it's a law.
Got it. And if they only see their clients on like an appointment basis, I think most of them are like insurance brokers. Would they need it for this?
Again, it would be, do they come into the office and is the office able to be open to the public?
Okay.
And if
got-
if the answer is yes, then if they work from home and everything's on Zoom, no.
Okay, thank you.
And then Kimberly?
Yes, thank you. So what you're saying is members, we keep the door unlocked so members come in, but then the public can come in too. So we have to have a plan in place. Okay.
Yes.
And then my other question was, I heard you talking about homeless. We're near the hospital and it's a constant battle for us. As long as we have how we handle that in place and just put that in our prevention plan, that's sufficient.
Yes.
Because we just call the police. I mean, you know, and the Be
That's
Well
fine.
van comes and, you know, all that. But
Right.
I don't want to have to like investigate and all that stuff like Kalosha's asking me to do for all these little things.
What you would do would be, let's say, what you know, an investigation could be 5 minutes, right? The investigation could be, there was an unhoused person sleeping in front of our building when we walked in today on June 20th. So we called the police. The police got here about 2 hours later or whatever, 10 minutes, and the person is now gone. And everybody knows about it. I've logged it on the violent incident log. It's over. It's done. The investigation is complete. I don't think there's anything we could have done differently or prevented it. And our next safety meeting, I'm going to let people know that we did this on June 20th and the police were called. That would kind of be the whole circumference.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Wow, you guys.
I have a
Are-
question. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can see my hand.
Oh, I can't. Oh, I'm sorry. Sarita?
Yes. So my question is, when I asked about the minimum amount of employees, it's just myself and one staff person. Our doors are locked. So if you can't just walk in, you have to be buzzed in. I know that you said if you open to the public, then you have to have a plan. Is that still considered open to the public because we have to buzz them in?
That's a great question, and that has not been defined by Kalosha. So the answer is I don't know, and neither have they have not said yet. I don't know. And not because we're in the same situation. You know, we really don't have anybody coming in. We go to our clients, but we have we have more than 10 people in the office many times, but nobody can get in unless they use a key or the button. So I don't feel like we're open to the public, but at the same time, people are coming up and knocking on our doors. So I don't know, but I'm going with better to be safe than sorry. I want to do the whole plan. So
Okay.
I wish I could answer that question for you on the 2-person with the thing, because it does seem like you wouldn't need it, but I can't say that. And
Okay.
that would be a great question for the Kalosha consultation hotline. Look up Kalosha consultation. You can shoot an email to them with that very question and see if they give you an answer. And then you'd feel really great, you know, because you'd know. We're going to try and do an August 20th free webinar with Kalosha consultation. We're working on that right now. And I'm going to make sure that's one of the questions we pitch to them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Kim, we have another question from James.
Uh-huh.
Hi. So actually a couple questions. First one is there's 14 employees. Half of them, a third work from home. And then we have 2 people in one location. And at any given time, there's probably about 6 or 7 in another location. So we're never full 10. We're never, so 2 questions is, one, sounds like I have to have a plan for both locations, separate and audits and all that stuff.
You're not required to have 2 separate plans for 2 separate locations. You can have one plan and then kind of, you know, have a subset within it, you know, and kind of say, here's our plan, and this is for location A, and this is for location B.
Okay. All right. And 2, I guess it's just number of employees. So since I have 14, even though we're never together, we're still required to do this.
Yes, because of the fact that you're open to the public.
Yeah,
You know, because I'm looking at your building right now, just behind you, James, and unless you, again, can somebody, come through those windows? Can somebody walk in your front door? Or is that locked all the time? Is your front door locked at all times and
no.
nobody, those are the thing.
We try to be the welcoming associations, right? Have our realtors come in.
Right. And if your realtors are coming in and they're getting their signs and they're doing, most of us, and again, same thing for me, even though my door is locked, yes, I'm open to the public. If somebody's like, I'm a CA, I want to come see you. Okay, I'm not going to say you can't come. So but again, it hasn't been established. What does open to the public exactly mean?
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sure. We're at 1:03, so I don't want to stay long to make you stay long, but I'm happy to see if I can answer any other questions for you.
It looks like we've got everything covered, and I just want to remind everybody that this session has been recorded and it will be in the Friday recap tomorrow, the AE Friday recap, so that you'll have it. Which is awesome. And any of the information, I took really good notes. So if you have questions, I might have a few answers for you. And Kim and Natalie, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. It was so informative. And again, a shout out to Elaine for thinking of this and getting it on our radar in the first place, because honestly, this has been really informative. And also to Natalie for her great patience with me. We had a couple of other events going on and I felt like I was herky jerky with her the entire time. So hats off. Thank you to Natalie and Kim. Great presentation as always.
Thank you. We're happy to be of service. So thank you all. I hope everybody has a great day. I'll send you that policy, Peggy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bye, everybody.